Hello, my name is Dr. Ebenezer Satyaraj. I'm Director of Molecular Nutrition at Nestle Purina Research in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm really excited to be here to share with you some of the emerging paradigms in human nutrition and try to talk to you about the relationship between nutrition and the immune system. Let's begin with this first slide that outlines the various cell types and processes and pathways that is used by the immune system to initiate an immune response to a pathogen. The three functions the immune system does for us is number one, tries to keep the bad stuff out, which is called as the barrier function. Second, check if anything has gotten through, which is the surveillance function. And finally, deal with the intruder, which is the defense function. It does this by asking two fundamental questions. The first question is asked is this me? Whether what it sees is self or non-self. And second, if it is not me, it comes up with a process of trying to protect and defend us from the intruder. So the three key ideas that I want to share with you today is first, answer the question, why enhance the immune health of an otherwise healthy animal? The second question, how can food influence the immune system? And finally, try to share with you a framework of the relationship of food and the immune system. So let's ask the first question, what is the need to enhance the health of a healthy animal? So this slide actually shows the immune status of a dog, in this case, during various life stages. As you can see, when the dog is young, the immune system is a little weaker in responding. When the dog is middle-aged or adult, it has the best response. And then as the dog gets older, the response declines. Now, this is true of all mammals, dogs, cats, and us humans as well. And therefore, life stage can have a different function, different effect on the immune status of the individual. It's important to point out that there are other things that can also cause changes in the immune system, and these are stress, fatigue, and disease. Now, we'll talk about stress in a moment, but let's address fatigue and disease. Fatigue refers to extreme exhaustion that is seen, for example, in an athlete that's training for a long marathon. And disease, as you can all know, can also have a significant impact on the immune system. So we're not going to refer or talk about fatigue and disease in this presentation. So let's ask the question, how does life stage influences the immune system? And what I have in the next slide are some of the characteristics of the immune system response in a young animal. And what you can see immediately is that the immune response in an young animal is a little lower. And that's because the proliferative ability of the immune cells in a new pup, for example, is much less than that of an adult. Immune system in a young animal also has a Th2 bias. In other words, it's not as effective in fighting a pathogen. And the primary reasons for this are, one, there is an inefficient antigen presentation by an important cell type called macrophage. There's also the influence of the fetoplacental environment, which tends to be immunosuppressive. That's the reason why the conceptus or the fetus is carried all the way through term, and you're able to deliver without having an immune effect on the baby or the puppy or the kitten in this case. And thirdly, there is a Th1 cell types. These are the cell types that are important in mounting an effective immune response. They undergo a process called as apoptosis. In other words, instead of proliferating, they die. And this is a process that eventually gets fixed, but that's a characteristic of the younger animal. In this slide, let's look at the immune response in older animals. Immune response in older animals is also characterized by a lowered response, but there are for two different reasons. One, there is a decline in the hematopoietic cell activity of the bone marrow and thymus. There's also increased oxidative stress and low-grade inflammation, resulting in a phenomenon that's called as immunosenescence. If we look at the biological reasons for this, again, it centers around inefficient antigen presenting by the important cell type macrophage that we discussed in the earlier slide. There's also cellular changes and increased apoptosis that happens in older age. Let's move on to another interesting characteristic of lower immune response and stress, and this is very different from the life stage issues that we talked about. If you look at immune response and stress, it is also characterized by a lower immune response. And one of the ways in which immunologists assess the immune response is by looking at a vaccine response in an individual. In this case, you're not infecting the person with a pathogen, you're exposing them to an innocuous antigen, and you're asking the question, is there a difference in their immune response? There's an interesting study that was published by Glasser et al., where they characterized the vaccine response of two different groups of people, and these were medical students, young people. Half of them were getting ready for a board exam, and as you can imagine, a board exam brings in a certain amount of stress in their life, and the other half did not have that stressor. And when they looked at the vaccine response between these two different groups, the ones that were stressed had a significantly lower vaccine response as compared to the ones who were not stressed. And this is important to point out that even in a younger person, stress can significantly lower the immune response. They also went on to do a similar study. In this case, they selected a group of older people, and this older couples had a stressor in their life. And the stressor was they were taking care of one of the partner who had Alzheimer's. And as you can imagine, that can also be quite stressful for these people. And you exactly see the same response, that the vaccine response in these older people who were stressed had much lower response as compared to older couples who did not have the stressor in their life. That goes to tell the important point that stress, no matter what your life stage, can have a significant negative impact on your immune system. And again, if you look at the reasons for this, the three primary reasons that people look at and talk about is inefficient antigen presenting by this important cell type called macrophages, as well as the stress hormones that are present during a stressful situation, such as glucosteroids, epinephrine, norepinephrine, etc. Let's put all these things in a Venn diagram format to understand what's the common factor that pervades between three different types of situations where you can have a lowered immune response. If you look at the younger animal, the older animal, and in stress, and as you can see right away that impacting the macrophage function seems to be the primary reason why there is lower immune response in all these three cases. Let's recap what we learned so far. Life stage, both neonatal or old age, can have and stress can have a lower immune response. And the common reasons for that seems to be inefficient antigen presenting function in all three cases. So we looked at the two questions and tried to answer them. One, why enhance the immune health of an animal that's otherwise healthy? And now we look at the question, how can food influence the immune system? Here is another diagram that depicts the three primary factors that can impact the immune status of an animal. One, the genes which they're born with. Second is life stage. We already saw life stage has a significant impact on the immune system. And the third is lifestyle, which includes diet, veterinary care that's provided to your pet, as well as the interaction that you have with your pet. These are things that we can influence. We cannot change the genes. We cannot change the lifestyle of the pet. So let's move on and start looking at the relationship between nutrition and the immune system. There are 4 stages at which the immune system and nutrition interact. And let's begin with the first stage, which is complete and balanced nutrition. The second stage, where you're optimizing some of the key nutrients that's essential for the immune system. And then go on to stages 3 and 4. And there's an important difference between stage 1 and 2 and stage 3 and 4. Stage 1 and 2 are passive. In these stages, you're actually providing things to the immune system and enabling it to use it and then have a good response in terms of immune status. In stage 3 and 4, you're actually training the immune system to respond better to a challenge. Stage 3, we talk about active immunomodulation, and I'll give you a couple of examples of that. And stage 4, you're looking at personalized immune nutrition. We're addressing a specific issue that your pet may have. So let's look at stage 2. Stage 1, just to point out, means you need to be able to give a good and balanced nutrition to your pet. And it is important to remember that in situations, even in humans, where there's not sufficient nutrition, leads to a significant lower immune status. For example, in famines and war conditions where there is food shortage and scarcity, immune system deficiency ensues, resulting in significant amount of communicable diseases that are spread. Now, we assume that most of us will be feeding a good, balanced, healthy diet to our pets. So really, let's talk about stage 2. We're optimizing key micro and macronutrients. Now, if you think about the factors that are essential for the immune system to perform, most of these are proteins. Take antibodies, for example, cytokines that initiate various pathways and networks of the immune system. All of these are proteins, and therefore a diet that has high quality protein is essential. You can also increase vitamins like vitamin A, C, and E, as well as compounds, minerals like zinc, magnesium, and iron. These are important factors for the immune system. Calorie restriction strategy also falls in this category. Antioxidant supplementation, especially in older pets, is an important way to be able to blunt some of the oxidative stress effects that we saw earlier. And then prebiotics to support a healthy microflora are all approaches that really fall in this bucket of optimizing micro and macronutrients. Stage 3 is where we start getting into much more interesting interactions between nutrition and immune system. And this is where we talk about active immunomodulation. And the goal here is to be able to enable efficient macrophage function. As we saw, deficiency in macrophage function seems to be the common reason why you have lowered immune response in younger animal, older animals, or animals that are stressed. And the way to do that is to be able to target the innate immune receptors in the gut by selecting ingredients that you add to the diet that can specifically enhance the function of these macrophages. Great examples of these are microbial immunomodulators such as beta-glucans that have been used in diets, mannins, microbial nucleic acids, proteins, peptidoglycans, all coming from the microbiome to be able to interact with the innate immune receptors in the gut and restore efficient macrophage functions. Probiotics, such as Fortiflora, fall in this category, where you're again targeting the innate immune receptors in the gut to be able to enable them to function much better. There's also examples of immunomodulatory ingredients, such as bovine colostrum, where we have shown in studies that adding bovine colostrum to diet can significantly enhance the immune status of the animal. Whey protein concentrates are another examples. And this whole category of ingredients specifically target the innate immune receptors in the gut, activate them, and eventually try to restore functioning of the macrophages, which is the key element that suppresses immune status in the 3 stages that we saw earlier. Also, managing inflammation using DHA or omega-3 fatty acids will also fall in this category because you're actively down-modulating inflammation that can have a negative impact on the immune system. Let's go on to the 4th stage, and this is where most of the research today is focused, where you're trying to target a specific issue that your pets may be having. A great example of this would be an approach to be able to suppress inflammation locally in animals, and this is true for humans as well, that are suffering with inflammatory bowel disease. People have shown in mouse and even in human experiments where ingredients that are rich in TGF-beta, a cytokine that can specifically suppress inflammation, can have a great effect in trying to reduce some of the symptoms associated with inflammatory bowel disease. There is research happening where people are looking at probiotics that can deliver or reduce inflammation locally in the gut, which will have the same benefit. And this really is where the area of immunonutrition is moving into, where you can target specific issues that your pets may be having through diet. Now let's put all this together, and I'm trying to just walk you through the key points that we set out to answer. The first question that we posed ourselves was, why enhance the immune health of an animal that's otherwise healthy? And as we saw, there are 2 primary reasons. One is life stage, if the animal is young or if the animal is older, and the second is stress. The next question that we posed ourselves was, how can food influence the immune system? And the approach here is to be able to choose ingredients that target specific receptors that are present on macrophages. These are typically receptors associated with the innate immune system, activate those, and that can help restore the macrophage function, because as we saw through our presentation, deficient macrophage function is one of the primary reasons why you have lowered immune status in all these 3 cases that we saw. And finally, what's the relationship between nutrition and the immune system? We saw that there are 4 stages. First stage is to be able to give basic nutrition, which is critical, because if you don't have sufficient nutrition, you can have a lowered immune status. Then you start increasing the amount of optimum ingredients that are needed, and the examples of that we saw here were proteins, vitamins, and minerals. These are essential for the function of the immune system. But it's important to point out that both stage 1 and stage 2 are passive because you're trying to give the immune system things for itself to take and perform. What's interesting is when you move to stage 3, where not only are you providing these key ingredients, but also making the immune system exercise. It's like not just having a lot of protein shake and not doing any exercise. You need to be able to do both to be able to build strong muscles. That's exactly what you're doing in stage 3, where you're making the immune system work. And you do that by using ingredients that can target those innate immune receptors in the gut. Examples that we saw were probiotics, several microbially derived components, and immunomodulatory ingredients such as colostrum and bovine colostrum, bovine whey protein concentrates, which can specifically target those receptors and activate those. And stage 4 is where the whole field is evolving, where you can use nutrition to be able to address a very specific issue that your pet may have. And that's where personalized immunonutrition really takes on. I want to take this moment to thank all the people that participated in the various studies that I referred to, without whose effort and dedication we couldn't have accomplished all the things that we have done and described in the study. Thank you very much.